a prayer. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely, goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen and amen. Okay? So, today class, we will continue our discussion with regards to the medical ethics manual. Okay? For guidance, all lectures are uploaded in the files of the Microsoft Teams in ICS. Okay? So, please check it out. So, let us begin. This is the Ethics Manual, 3rd edition, taken from the World Medical Association. Okay. So last time we discussed chapter 1, the principal features of medical ethics. Today, we will be discussing chapter 2 of the manual, physicians and patients. So within the course of our lecture class, we will discuss first the objectives, okay, of this chapter. And then I will present a case study, okay, so that you and your classmates will have time to lecture and then, of course, make the journal. Okay? Remember, class, the journal is very important. Okay, it will help you. So, the patient class, especially when you will undergo a invasive procedure like operation, okay, it is necessary, okay, mandatory to sign an informed consent. Okay, so we will discuss the prerequisite of informed consent, in, not just in the practice of medicine, but its legal implication. Okay, and the next topic is decision making for incompetent patients. Okay, when you say incompetent patients, these are patients who are not of sound mind. Okay, for example, um, they have mental conditions. Okay. Next, we will be discussing doctrine of confidentiality. And then next topic, the beginning of life issues. Okay. So we will be discussing implications of the time where life begins. Okay, what are the legal implications? What are the ethical considerations? And then the end of life issues. Okay, we will be discussing also sensitive topics like abortion, and other end-of-life issues. And then, of course, back to the case study, so that we will have a discussion whether or not what principle of ethics will be applied in a given scenario. So that's the coverage of chapter 2 class, physicians and patients. So without further ado, let's go directly to the topic. That is page 34. Okay. 34. So, physicians and patients. What are the objectives? Within the course of our lecture for today, after working through this chapter, the student should be able to first explain why all patients are deserving of respect and equal treatment. Okay? So, remember class, the 4 pillars. So, it must be inculcated in this scenario. Next objective is the students will be able to identify the essential elements of informed consent. Next, learning experience is the student will be able to explain how medical decisions should be made for patients who are incapable of making their own decisions. Okay. Next, explain the justification for patient confidentiality and recognize legitimate and exceptions to the confidentiality rule. Okay, so please turn off your microphone, class. So there is always a general rule and the exception to the. Please turn off your microphone. Okay, thank you. Next, recognize the principal ethical issues that occur at the beginning and end of life. And then lastly, for the student, to summarize the arguments for and against the practice of euthanasia or assisted suicide. Okay, take note, class, that this has legal implication. This is a case-to-case basis. Because in the Philippines, euthanasia is illegal. When you say illegal, not accepted, frowned upon by law, abhorred by law. Okay? So, however, in the other countries, euthanasia is accepted in a certain degree. So, there are qualifications for euthanasia to be applied. Okay? So, in the Philippines, illegal. In other countries, it might be legal, depending on the circumstance. And the difference between these actions and the palliative care or foregoing treatment. Okay, when you say palliative care, this is assisted caring. Okay, maybe for clients who has chronic illness or terminal illness. Okay. So, wait. So this is the case study, class, the scenario that you will apply your learning for today. Okay. First, Dr. P, an experienced and skilled surgeon, is about to finish night duty at a medium-sized community hospital. A young woman is brought to the hospital by her mother, who leaves immediately after telling the intake nurse that she has to look after her other children. The patient is bleeding vaginally and is in a great deal of pain. Dr. P examines her and decides that she has had either a miscarriage or a self-induced abortion. He does a quick dilatation and curettage and tells the nurse to ask the patient whether she can afford to stay in the hospital until it is safe for her to be discharged. Dr. Q comes in to replace Dr. P, who goes home without having spoken to the patient. Okay, so in this scenario class, what are the ethical consideration that comes to mind? Okay, and what are the ethical doctrines or principles that you will apply in this given scenario? Okay, so you will learn that as we move along. By the way, class, we'll just make a rundown of the principles involved in this topic because these topics are very long. Okay, I'll just make a rundown. So what's the special about physician-patient relationship? So the physician-patient relationship is the cornerstone of medical practice and therefore of medical ethics. Of course, the big bulk of the profession of a doctor is to interact with your patients. Okay, physician-patient relationship. In law, there is a Latin term called fiduciary relationship. Okay, so when you say fiduciary, it means it is based in trust and confidence. Okay, so physician-patient relationship is a fiduciary relationship which is based in trust and confidence. Okay, so that's the essence of this relationship. Okay, this relationship is protected by law. So there is what you call physician-patient privilege. So when a client or a patient would tell his or her doctor about his illness, the physicians or doctors are duty bound to protect the sensitive information. Okay, so if you breach this relationship, this privilege communication, the physician, the three-pronged liability of a physician, which is administrative liability, criminal liability, and civil liability will attach. Okay, so take note of that, class. So be careful because this relationship is not just sacred, but you are duty bound to protect it under the law. Okay, so as noted above, the Declaration of Geneva requires of the physician that the health of my patient will be my first consideration. Okay, remember the Geneva Declaration where the oath. Okay, this is like the oath where all the general principles of ethics are being inculcated or applied. Okay, so in the Geneva Declaration, you can find this phrase. Okay, the health of my patient will be my first consideration. Okay, so it is important, class, to uphold the basic ethical considerations for the protection of your patients. Okay, and not just for the protection of your patients, but for your own protection also. Okay, because remember, if you breach this legally bound principle, the three-pronged liability will attach. Okay, it's either your license will be revoked, removed, or suspended. Okay, in the administrative liability. In the criminal liability, of course, you will be imprisoned. Civil liability, okay, you will pay in a form of damages. Okay, so monetary award will be given to the other party. And then the International Code of Ethics states that a physician shall owe his her patients complete loyalty and all the scientific resources available to him or her. Okay? So once again, this relationship is enshrined in the International Code of Medical Ethics by virtue of this phrase. A physician shall owe his or her patients complete loyalty and all the scientific resources available to him or her. Okay? So, as discussed in Chapter 1, the traditional interpretation of physician-patient relationship is paternalistic one in which the physician made the decision and the patient submitted to them has been widely rejected in recent years. Okay, take note class that the relationship between doctors and patient, unlike before, which is traditional, is now considered dynamic. Okay, so when you say dynamic, there is participation of both parties. Okay, before, in a traditional sense, it is the physician, it is the doctors who has a say for the treatment. Okay, right now there is a paradigm shift. So the client or the patient can decide, can demand. The patient has his own right. Okay, the physician has his own rights and obligation. At the same time, the patient has its own right and obligation. Okay, so the relationship right now is dynamic. That's why informed consent is really necessary. Remember, class, that the first step in the informed consent principle is for the doctor or the allied medical professional to conduct health teaching. Okay? Health promotion, disease prevention, health teachings, that's the first step before the patient would sign the informed consent form. Okay? You appraise the patient of the pros and cons of the operation that he or she will undergo. Okay? So this is just matter of reading, class. I will leave this up to you. So the health of my patient will be my first consideration, okay? As enshrined in the Declaration of Geneva, okay? The Declaration of Geneva is one of the basis for the Hippocratic Oath, okay? So take note, class, and always remember the last step of becoming a full-fledged physician or doctor is not the passing of the board exam. Okay? The final step is the taking of the oath, because one requirement is continuing good moral character. Okay? So if you pass the board exam but you have committed infractions, okay, so the board of medicine will withhold your taking of the oath, and of course you cannot practice because and then for all intents and purposes you are not considered a full-fledged doctor because you have not yet taken the oath, which is considered to be the final step in your in the practice of medicine as a full-fledged doctor. Okay, so time and again, we have discussed respect and equal treatment, especially with regards to the 4 pillars of medical ethics. Okay, so these are just matters of reading. Class, I'll just read the first few lines. So the belief that all human beings deserve respect and equal treatment is relatively recent. Okay, because last time we have discussed that the practice of medicine before is somewhat traditional, where the 100% of the control of treatment and care is based on the discretion of the doctor. Right now, the relationship is somewhat dynamic. Okay, the doctor has a say. The patient has a say also in his treatment regimen. Okay, so these are just matters of reading. We have discussed this time and time again. Also, the principles of respectability and equal treatment is enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, okay, which states in Article 1 all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Okay? So all of us, whether you are rich or professional, okay, or not. So in the eyes of the law and in the eyes of God, all of us are the same. Okay? All of us are of equal footing. Many other international and national bodies have produced statement of rights, either for all human beings, for citizens in a specific country, or for certain groups of individuals. Okay, so um, international organization have generally accepted principles with regards to children's right, patients' right, consumers' right, okay, and so on and so forth. Okay? Once again, respectability, doctrine of respectability and equal treatment is again enshrined in the Declaration of Geneva. Okay? So, I will read the phrase in the Declaration of Geneva where respect and equal treatment principle is illustrated. So, permit considerations of age, disease, or disability, creed, ethnic origin, gender, nationality, political affiliation, race, sexual orientation, social standing, or any other factor to intervene between my duty and my patient. Okay, so as you can see, okay, as doctors, you need to respect whether your patient is young, old, or middle age. Okay, whether your patient is has a form of disability, whatever origin or creed, gender. Okay, of course, because of the rise of the LGBTQ community. So, as a doctor, respect should be always present. Okay? Nationality, political affiliation, race, sexual orientation, or social standing. It does not matter, class. Everybody, everyone, in the eyes of God or in the eyes of the law, we are of equal footing. Okay? So, you treat everyone the same. Okay? So, these are just matters of reading, class. I will leave this up to you. Another declaration where doctrine of respectability and equal treatment is illustrated is the World Medical Association Declaration on Patient Safety. Okay? So this declaration calls on physicians to go beyond the professional boundaries of healthcare and cooperate with all relevant parties, including patients, to adopt a proactive system approach to patient safety. Okay, remember class that in a medical setting, it is composed, in a healthcare system, it is composed of a medical team. Okay, the doctor or physician being the head. Okay, and of course, there are allied professional healthcare professionals. Okay, nurses, aides. Okay, nursing aides, respiratory therapist, okay, and so on and so forth. So, being the head, you must lead this team, okay? And at the same time, um, be fair, okay? Respect not just your healthcare team, but also the patient. Because class, more often than not, okay, even though your patient is dying, but it is not your skill that they will remember. Okay? Not your skill, not your mental prowess, but it is your smiling face, your gentle hands, okay? That they will remember, especially when they are treated and get healed, okay? It's not your expertise class, but your comforting words, okay? Your good words, your good camaraderie, your relationship. It is the thing that will etched in their mind and heart. Okay? So the trust that is essential to the physician-patient relationship has generally been interpreted to mean the physician should not desert patient whose care they are undertaken. Okay? So once again, this principle is enshrined in the International Code of Medical Ethics, specifies only one reason for ending physician-patient relationship. So if the patient requires another physician with different skills, the physician shall owe his or her patients complete loyalty and all scientific resources available to him or her. Okay, so we have discussed this earlier. So these are just matters of reading, class. I will leave this up to you. So in ending a physician-patient relationship, physicians should be prepared to just